It was a cold evening in a small town. The streets were empty except for the glow of street lamps reflecting on the wet pavement. Inside a modest restaurant, a young waiter named Daniel was finishing his shift.
तो दोस्तों आज की एक नया कहानी ले आ चुका हूँ जिस कहानी का नाम होगा यहाँ पर दो यतीम को खिलाने की मतलब एक वेटर यतीम को खिलाने के बाद उसका जो लाइफ था वो लाइफ चेंज हो गया। किस प्रकार से चेंज हुआ है और क्या क्या हुआ था वो सारे के सारे आप लोगों को देखने को मिलेगा इस वीडियो के अंदर। और वो सारे के सारे देखने के लिए आप लोगों को करना क्या होगा, वीडियो को लाइक कर दीजिए, चैनल पे नए आए तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करके बेल आइकन को भी ऑल कर दीजिए। तो चलिए हम लोग सबसे पहले वो वाला वीडियो को देख लेते क्या क्या यहाँ पर हुआ था। एक्चुअल में इस जो लड़का था उस लड़का का कैसे यहाँ पर लाइफ चेंज हो गया। ओके, तो सबसे पहले आप लोग उस वीडियो को देख लीजिए।
It was a cold evening in a small town. The streets were empty except for the glow of street lamps reflecting on the wet pavement. Inside a modest restaurant, a young waiter named Daniel was finishing his shift. His hands were tired from carrying trays all day, but his heart was heavier than his body. He had grown up poor himself, and every night he saw hungry faces pressed against the restaurant's glass windows, watching people eat what they could never afford. That night, as he was cleaning a table near the window, he noticed two children, thin, shivering, their clothes torn and faces pale with hunger. They couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. Their eyes followed every plate of food that passed through the dining hall. Daniel paused. He knew the restaurant's rules, no free meals, no exceptions. But when he looked into those children's eyes, he saw himself years ago, scared, hungry, waiting for someone to show kindness. He walked into the kitchen, picked up 2 leftover meals that would have been thrown away, and quickly packed them. Then he stepped outside. "Here," Daniel whispered, kneeling down and placing the warm food in their trembling hands. "Eat, no one should go to bed hungry." The children's eyes widened. They didn't say much, only thank you in soft, trembling voices. One of them, the little girl, clutched his sleeve for a second as if trying to memorize his face. Daniel patted their shoulders gently, smiled, and went back inside, never knowing what would become of them. Years passed. Life was not kind to Daniel. He never became rich. He married late, had no children, and lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town. Still, he remained kind, always offering what little he had to those in need. To his neighbors, he was just Daniel the waiter, a simple man with a big heart. One summer morning, 20 years after that night, Daniel was tending to his small garden when the sound of a helicopter roared above his house. He looked up, shielding his eyes from the wind and dust. A massive black helicopter descended right in front of his yard, its blades shaking the trees. Daniel was terrified. Helicopters didn't just land in front of ordinary waiters' homes. He thought maybe it was a mistake. The door opened, and out stepped 2 people in elegant suits, confident, poised, and surrounded by security guards. The man looked around until his eyes locked on Daniel. His lips curved into a trembling smile. "Do you remember me?" the man asked, his voice breaking. Daniel shook his head, confused. "I was one of those children outside the restaurant. 20 years ago, you gave us food when we were starving. You saved our lives." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His memory flashed back to that rainy night, to 2 hungry orphans holding onto warm meals as if they were treasures. The young woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. "I was the little girl. You don't know what that meal meant. We had lost everything, our parents, our home. That night we were ready to give up, but you gave us hope." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He could barely stand. I only gave you food, nothing more." The man stepped closer. "No, you gave us more than food. You gave us dignity. You made us feel like we mattered when the world had forgotten us. Because of you, we found the strength to keep going." He turned to the helicopter and signaled. Another guard came down, carrying a leather briefcase. The man continued, "We built our lives, worked hard, and became successful, but we never forgot that night, and we never forgot you. Now it's our turn to give back." The briefcase was opened, filled with documents. Inside was a deed to a large estate, a trust fund, and more money than Daniel could ever have imagined. Daniel staggered back. No, this can't be real. I don't deserve this." The woman stepped forward, holding his hands. "Yes, you do, because you showed us the greatest kind of wealth, kindness. Without it, we wouldn't be here today." The neighbors gathered outside, stunned to see a helicopter in their small town. They whispered and gasped as Daniel, the humble waiter, stood there crying, embraced by the very children he once saved. That night, Daniel sat alone in his kitchen, staring at the papers and the future that had suddenly changed. His heart was overwhelmed, not by the wealth, but by the realization that one small act of kindness, something he had done without expecting anything in return, had come back to him in a way he could never have imagined. He whispered to himself, kindness never dies, it always finds its way back. And from that day forward, Daniel used his newfound fortune not to live lavishly, but to build shelters, kitchens, and schools for children who were lost and hungry, just as those two orphans had once been. The story of the waiter who fed two hungry orphans spread across the country, inspiring countless others to believe in the power of kindness. Because sometimes the smallest act, a plate of food, a gentle smile, a touch of compassion, can plant seeds that grow into miracles 20 years later. And that's the truth, no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted.
तो दोस्तों आशा करता हूँ आप लोगों ने यहाँ पर फुल वीडियो को देख लिया। देखने के बाद आप लोगों को यहाँ पर सारे कुछ यहाँ पर मिल गया, मतलब यहाँ पर जो मैंने बताया था आप लोगों को, यहाँ पर एक लड़का कैसे उसका जो लाइफ है लाइफ को चेंज कर लिया, और वो सारे के सारे आप लोगों ने यहाँ पर वीडियो के देखने के बाद आप लोगों को यहाँ पर पता चल गया। तो दोस्तों अगर वीडियो आप लोगों को अच्छी लगती है तो वीडियो को लाइक कर दीजिए, चैनल पर नए आए तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करके बेल आइकन को भी ऑल कर दीजिए, तो ऐसी वीडियो आप लोगों को डेली बाय डेली मिलता रहेगा। तो दोस्तों हम लोग नेक्स्ट वीडियो पर मिलते हैं, तब तक के लिए टाटा बाय बाय।